Any discovery of a Roman dodecahedron is remarkable and unusual because there's not many more than 100 known to exist.
For centuries, archaeologists kept uncovering a strange metal object buried across Europe, a small, hollow sphere covered in evenly spaced holes and tiny knobs. No one knew what it was. Not a weapon, not jewelry, not a tool anyone could recognize. They called it the Roman Dodecahedron, and for over 1,700 years, it remained one of history's most baffling artifacts. But now, new research may have finally cracked the mystery, and the answer isn't harmless, decorative, or innocent. It suggests something far more unsettling about the ancient world than expected. So join us in this video as we finally solve the Roman dodecahedron mystery. The solved mystery of the Roman dodecahedron. The breakthrough did not begin in a dusty ruin or a dramatic excavation. It started in quiet museum storage rooms across Europe. Researchers gathered Roman dodecahedra from different collections and used advanced three-dimensional scanners to study them in ways never possible before. These scans created perfect digital models, allowing scientists to measure every curve, hole, and angle with extreme accuracy. Details too small for the human eye suddenly became clear. What they found changed everything. The holes on each dodecahedron were not random in size. They followed patterns. The differences between the holes formed precise mathematical ratios. When researchers compared the spacing and angles, they saw consistent geometric relationships. This was not decoration. It was designed with a purpose. Then came the key realization. When you look through certain pairs of holes, each opening frames a different portion of the sky. Because the holes are different sizes, they limit your field of view in measurable ways. That means you can use them to judge the angular size of objects in the distance, including the sun and moon. This led to a bold but testable idea. Roman dodecahedra may have been astronomical measuring devices. Imagine holding one up and sighting the sun through a specific hole at a certain time of year. The sun would perfectly fill the opening only when it reached a particular height above the horizon. That height changes with the seasons. By checking which hole matched the sun's position, a user could track seasonal progress with surprising precision. The knobs on the corners, once thought decorative, suddenly made sense too. They act like alignment points. By lining up two knobs with a celestial object and looking through the matching hole, you create a stable sightline. This allows more consistent measurements, reducing human error. It turns a strange bronze object into a practical sky measuring tool. The dodecahedron's 12 faces also matter. Each face gives a slightly different angle and viewing direction. That provides multiple measurement options throughout the year, morning, noon, or evening in different seasons. Instead of a single-purpose tool, it becomes a compact, multifunction astronomical calculator. Metal analysis added more weight to the theory. Tests showed these objects were made from high-quality bronze alloys. The holes were remarkably circular, sometimes accurate to fractions of a millimeter. The faces were evenly shaped. The knobs were placed with consistency. This level of precision suggests careful calibration, not casual craftsmanship or simple ornament. To see if the idea truly worked, researchers built computer simulations using digital dodecahedron models. They placed virtual observers at the latitudes where real dodecahedra have been found, from Britain in the north to regions along the Danube. Then they simulated the sun and moon's positions throughout the year and tested whether the hole sizes could measure useful angles. The results were striking. The dodecahedra worked. By choosing the correct hole pair for the observer's location and the time of year, the models could measure solar elevation angles closely enough to mark important seasonal points. Equinoxes, solstices, the shifting phases of the moon. All of these could be tracked well enough to guide farming decisions. That last part is crucial. In northern provinces, farming was a matter of survival. Plant too early, and frost could unalive crops. Plant too late, and winter would come before harvest. A tool that helped predict the right planting window would be incredibly valuable. The difference between plenty and hunger. This also explains something that has long puzzled. Dodecahedra are mostly found in northern regions, not in Italy or other Mediterranean areas. In warmer climates, growing seasons are longer and less risky. But in the north, timing is everything. A portable sky measuring device would be worth its weight in bronze. But here's where the mystery turns darker. History does not credit the Romans with widely using precision astronomical instruments like this, especially not for everyday agricultural planning. Roman achievements usually highlight roads, aqueducts, architecture, and military engineering. Practical, large-scale works, not compact devices requiring advanced geometry and careful calibration. Yet these dodecahedra suggest knowledge of angular measurement, seasonal astronomy, and geometric design at a surprisingly high level. Making them would require understanding how the sun's path changes with latitude and time of year. That is applied science, not guesswork. So where did this knowledge come from? One possibility is that Roman science was far more advanced and more widely shared than surviving texts reveal. Another is that this knowledge was inherited, perhaps from Greek scientific traditions, and adapted into practical tools without being fully recorded in Roman writings. Either way, the dodecahedron stops being a curiosity. It serves as evidence of a lost layer of ancient science.
Roman dodecahedron is remarkable and unusual, which are very difficult to create.
There is still a huge amount of mystery around these very peculiar objects.
One that quietly shaped survival on the empire's colder edges. But if they knew this, why didn't they ever write it? Keep watching to find out. The silence that shouldn't exist. Roman writers did not ignore farming. In fact, they wrote about it in great detail. Authors like Columella and Varro carefully described tools, planting schedules, soil types, weather signs, and even basic astronomical observations farmers could use. Their manuals were practical guides meant to improve harvests and reduce risk. That is exactly why the silence about Roman dodecahedra feels so strange. If these objects really were used across the northern provinces as agricultural astronomical instruments, why did no one mention them? Several possible answers exist, and none of them is comfortable. One explanation is that dodecahedra were a form of proprietary technology. They may have been produced by specialized workshops or guilds that guarded their methods closely. If these craftsmen made and sold calibrated instruments, explaining exactly how they worked in a public text would destroy their advantage. Competitors could copy the design. In a world without patents, secrecy was protection. This could explain both their distribution and the lack of written descriptions. Another possibility is a divide between knowledge and literacy. The people skilled enough to design and manufacture these objects may not have been the same people writing agricultural manuals. Craft knowledge in the Roman world was often passed down through hands-on training. A master taught an apprentice directly, step by step. Techniques lived in workshops, not libraries. If the knowledge of how to use a dodecahedron was transmitted orally, it may simply never have been written down. Then there is the most unsettling idea of all. What if these devices were so common in certain regions that writers did not think they were worth mentioning? Think about everyday tools now. Few modern farming guides explain how to use a basic thermometer or measuring tape. Some knowledge is considered too ordinary to record. If sky watching with a calibrated bronze instrument was normal practice in the northern provinces, Mediterranean authors might not have seen it as noteworthy, especially if they were writing for readers in warmer climates with different farming needs. That possibility carries serious consequences. It would mean Roman practical science was more advanced and more widely used than surviving literature suggests. The gap between what people actually did and what was written down would be enormous. The objects themselves demand that we take this idea seriously. Making a Roman dodecahedron was not simple. Each of its 12 faces is a pentagon that must be shaped with care. The holes vary in size in a deliberate sequence. The walls are thin, yet evenly cast. The knobs at the corners are placed with consistency. Achieving this requires more than basic metalworking. It calls for planning, measurement, and quality control. Modern craftspeople have tried to recreate them using techniques available in antiquity. These attempts have succeeded, proving the Romans had the technical ability. But the process is not crude. It requires precise molds, careful finishing, and attention to geometric proportions. These are not random decorative objects. They are carefully made devices. Their numbers matter too. More than 130 dodecahedra have survived to the present day. That may not sound like much, but in the ancient world, bronze was valuable and frequently melted down. Most bronze objects were recycled into new tools, weapons, or statues. Items that survive usually did so because they were lost, buried, or hidden in unusual circumstances. For over 100 to remain after 2,000 years of recycling, the original number must have been far higher. There may have been hundreds or even thousands in circulation across the northern provinces over several generations. That suggests these were not rare instruments owned only by elite scholars. They were practical tools, likely used by ordinary people whose livelihoods depended on accurate seasonal timing. Accepting that forces us to rethink the Roman countryside. We often picture farmers using simple hand tools and relying only on inherited tradition and observation. The idea that they may have used calibrated bronze instruments based on geometry and celestial motion challenges that image at its core. Yet the pattern fits. The dodecahedra are real. They are well made. They appear in regions where seasonal timing is critical. When tested in simulations, they function as astronomical measuring devices. No other explanation accounts for their shape, precision, and distribution so neatly at the same time. Still, questions remain. We do not know exactly where they were manufactured. We do not know how instructions were passed on to users. There may have been regional variations or different models suited to different latitudes. The mystery is not gone, but the astronomical instrument theory explains more with fewer assumptions than any rival idea. And this is where the story turns darker than expected. For more than 250 years, archaeologists have known about these objects.
An object that had baffled archaeologists and antiquarians for the last 290 years. How can an object so distinct have puzzled the community for so long?
They were catalogued, displayed, debated, and labeled as an unknown purpose. The possibility that they were precision scientific instruments for everyday agricultural use was rarely taken seriously. Not because the evidence was impossible, but because it did not fit our expectations of Roman technology. We assumed limits. We assumed that such instruments belonged to later periods, to scholars, not farmers. We let those assumptions shape interpretation. The silence in the texts may also reflect simple survival bias. Only a tiny fraction of Roman writing still exists, perhaps 1% or less. Entire categories of documents are lost. Local manuals, workshop records, provincial letters. It is entirely possible that dodecahedra were described in texts that vanished long ago. There is also the nature of technical knowledge itself. Much Roman engineering was practical, learned by doing rather than by reading theory. Builders, surveyors, and metalworkers are often trained through apprenticeship. Skills lived in hands and habits, not in books. The use of an astronomical farming instrument may have belonged to that same tradition, taught directly, demonstrated under the open sky, and never formally written down. So the real discovery is not just what the Roman dodecahedron may have been, it is what its existence says about us. These objects suggest that ancient technological skill and scientific understanding may have been broader, more practical, and more widely distributed than our surviving texts imply. Our picture of the past is shaped by what happened to survive, not by everything that once existed. That means our confident statements about what ancient people could or could not do may rest on missing evidence and modern assumptions rather than hard limits. In that sense, solving the dodecahedron mystery does not simply answer a question. It exposes how much of history we might still be misunderstanding. So what exactly is this strange object everyone keeps arguing about? Let's find out. What a Roman dodecahedron actually is in plain terms. A Roman dodecahedron, sometimes called a Gallo-Roman dodecahedron, is a small, mysterious object made almost entirely of a copper alloy, typically bronze. These objects are hollow and shaped like a regular dodecahedron, meaning they have 12 flat pentagonal faces, just like a geometric model you might see in math class. Each of those faces has a circular hole of a different size drilled into its center, and every one of the object's corners has a little metal knob sticking out. What makes them immediately striking is how precise and finished they are on the outside. Smooth faces, neat holes, and symmetrical knobs, yet they rarely show signs of wear. There are no carved numbers or letters on any known example, and no text to explain what they were for. That absence of any written clue only deepens the mystery. The first Roman dodecahedron was recorded in 1739, and since then, more than 100 examples have been found across parts of Europe that were once inside the Roman Empire. They date from roughly the 2nd to the 4th century AD, a period of several hundred years. Even though they've been discovered for nearly 3 centuries now, their original purpose, why they were made, and how they were used, is still not known for certain. Most dodecahedra are made of metal using a technique archaeologists call lost wax casting. In this process, craftsmen shaped a model in wax, coated it in clay, heated it so the wax melted away, and then poured molten metal into the gap left behind. That approach allowed for smooth, well-finished outer surfaces, and in many cases the outer faces were likely polished after casting. But the interior surfaces are generally unfinished, meaning the maker's focus was clearly on external quality and appearance more than the hidden inside. In terms of size, these objects vary quite a bit. Some are small, only about 4 centimeters across, while others stretch to around 11 centimeters.
Typically they're between 4 and 10 centimeters tall, not including the knobs. You could say maybe they're reasonably valuable, right? It's a bronze object.
The circular holes that dot each face range in diameter from roughly 6 millimeters to 40 millimeters, giving each dodecahedron a unique pattern of openings. Because the holes lead directly into the hollow center, this arrangement creates a fascinating set of pathways through the object. Across all known examples, the lightest weighs about 35 grams, and the heaviest comes in at around 1,000 grams, a big range, suggesting they may not all have had the exact same intended use or audience. Most of the surviving examples show simple decoration, circles, lines, and dots surrounding the holes. The most common motif is 2 or 3 concentric circles etched around each opening, but even these designs never include written symbols. That stands in contrast to many Roman tools and instruments, which often have inscriptions or marks to explain their use. The metal knobs at the vertices are especially interesting because they aren't perfectly uniform. This detail suggests that the knobs were not always made as part of a single casting mold. In many cases, they were instead added later by soldering, which indicates extra craftsmanship after the main body was formed. There is at least one exception, an example in London's Society of Antiquaries collection, where the entire object, including the knobs, was cast as one piece, implying a different workshop or casting tradition. Even stranger, One example found in London doesn't have a single knob at each corner. It has clusters of 3 little balls at each vertex instead. That variation shows the dodecahedra are not all identical, and hints that different regions or workshops may have produced slightly different models. Despite being found in many different locations, in many shapes and sizes, and with curious decorative choices, the one unifying trait is this: they don't tell us what they are. No inscriptions, no instructions, no ancient description is tied to a known function. They shine and puzzle in equal measure, physical remnants of something real, made with effort and care, yet with no direct explanation from the people who created them. The object itself is simple to describe, but understanding what it meant to the Romans and why they made so many is another matter entirely. If we know what it is, where exactly were they used? Stay tuned to find out. Found everywhere except where you'd expect. The modern story of the Roman dodecahedron began in the summer of 1739. On June 28th of that year, a strange bronze object was presented to the Society of Antiquaries of London. It had reportedly been dug up in a field in Aston, Hertfordshire. No one at the time could say what it was. It looked geometric, deliberate, and ancient, but its purpose was a mystery from the very first moment it entered the historical record. That was only the beginning. Since that first discovery, around 130 similar objects have been found across Europe. They have turned up in Austria, Belgium, France, Germany, Hungary, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom. That widespread shows they were not a local oddity or a single craftsman's experiment. They were part of a broader pattern across the Roman world. But here's the strange part. None have been found in Italy, the very heart of the Roman Empire. This absence is hard to ignore. If these objects were Roman in origin, why are they missing from Rome and the Mediterranean core? Instead, they appear mainly in the northern provinces, regions that were once on the empire's frontier, places with colder climates and more demanding seasonal cycles. New discoveries are still being made even today. In 2023, amateur archaeologists uncovered a dodecahedron in excellent condition in the small village of Norton Disney in Lincolnshire, England. That find brought the total number discovered in Roman Britain alone to 33. The object was displayed at the Lincoln Museum until October 2024, giving the public a rare chance to see one of these mysterious artifacts up close. Despite the growing number of finds, the archaeological contexts where dodecahedra appear are often unclear. Many were discovered long ago, when excavation records were poor or completely absent. Still, where context is known, some patterns appear. A number have been found in military settings or in graves. Others have turned up in bathhouses, a theater, a coin hoard, and even in a riverbed. These varied locations make it difficult to tie them to a single clear function. Most researchers believe they were made in Gaul between the 2nd and 4th centuries AD. That suggests a regional manufacturing tradition rather than production in Rome itself. One especially intriguing example was found in a tomb alongside a bone object that may have been a handle. Unfortunately, the bone piece was too badly preserved to study properly, leaving more questions than answers. Over the years, scholars and enthusiasts have proposed more than 50 different explanations for what these objects were used for. The lack of any written mention in Roman texts or images makes certainty almost impossible. Some have suggested they were survey tools used to estimate distances or measure the size of faraway objects. But this theory struggles because the dodecahedra have no markings, scales, or numbers that would normally appear on mathematical instruments. Others have proposed that they were used for spool knitting, perhaps to make gloves. However, the earliest known reference to spool knitting comes from the 16th century, more than 1,000 years later. This idea also fails to explain why the objects were made of valuable bronze, or why similar multi-faced objects without holes exist, which would not work for knitting. A few people have even argued they were children's toys. But the careful craftsmanship, the cost of the metal, and the lack of obvious play features make that explanation feel unlikely. Because of the dodecahedron's geometric shape, many scholars have pointed to its philosophical meaning.
No, I haven't got a clue what it is either, but it's been several months since this Roman artifact was discovered in a field in Lincolnshire, but experts are still baffled as to what it is.
In classical thought, the dodecahedron was associated with the cosmos and the structure of the universe. This has led to the idea that the objects had a ritual or symbolic purpose rather than a practical one. Some believe they may have been used for fortune-telling. This suggestion partly comes from the fact that many have been found in areas of strong Gallo-Roman cultural blending, where local beliefs and Roman traditions mixed. Ritual objects sometimes appear in graves or special deposits, which could fit some of the discovery sites. The fact that several dodecahedra were found in coin hoards has led to another theory. Perhaps they were used to test coin sizes. By checking whether a coin fits through a hole of a certain diameter, someone might quickly spot coins that have been clipped or shaved down. While creative, this idea still does not explain the full complexity of the objects. Another possibility is that they were demonstration pieces made by skilled metalworkers. Bronze was expensive, and crafting such a precise, symmetrical object required real expertise. A dodecahedron might have served as proof of skill, something like a portfolio piece to show customers or to qualify for membership in a guild. Yet even this leaves unanswered why so many would be buried, lost, or placed in graves. In the 19th century, some antiquarians even imagined they were weapons, perhaps the head of a mace or a type of metal projectile. But modern scholars point out that they are generally too light and awkwardly shaped to function well as weapons. So here we are, nearly 3 centuries after the first one was recorded, with more than 100 examples in museums and collections, and still no firm answer. They are real. They were made with care. They were used enough to be lost, buried, and carried across provinces. Yet the people who made and used them left us no clear explanation. And that is what keeps the Roman dodecahedron from being just an odd artifact. It is a silent object from a literate civilization, a carefully crafted tool or symbol that somehow slipped completely through the written record, leaving us to piece together its story from metal alone. Could there be more shapes like this hiding in plain sight? Keep watching to find out. Not just dodecahedra. The mystery has relatives. Just when researchers thought the Roman dodecahedron was strange enough on its own, another discovery complicated the picture even further. For years, a particular object in Germany had been grouped with dodecahedra. Only later did scholars realize it wasn't a dodecahedron at all. It was something even rarer. This object, found near Arloff in Germany, is actually a Roman icosahedron. An icosahedron is a geometric shape with 20 triangular faces, not 12 pentagonal ones. Like the dodecahedra, the Arloff icosahedron is made of hollow bronze and has small spheres or knobs on its corners. It clearly belongs to the same family of carefully crafted, multi-faced metal objects, but it also has important differences that suggest deliberate variation rather than random design. 2 faces opposite each other have holes, creating a direct line of sight through the object. Even more interesting, 3 of the knobs around one face are noticeably larger than the rest. This gives the object a clear top and bottom. If you place the 3 larger knobs downward like feet, the largest hole ends up at the top, as if the object were meant to stand in a specific orientation. That detail matters. It suggests that, like the dodecahedra, This was not just decorative geometry. It had a designed position, and possibly a specific function that depended on how it was held or placed. The Arloff icosahedron is now displayed in the Rheinisches Landesmuseum in Bonn, standing as a reminder that the dodecahedron was not an isolated design idea. And the surprises don't stop there. In 2009, metal detectorists in France reported another unusual object found at Saint-Trivier-de-Courtet. This one was not a dodecahedron or an icosahedron, but something closer to a sphere. It featured a mix of triangular and pentagonal holes across its surface. The shape was different, yet the concept was familiar. A hollow metal form pierced with carefully arranged openings. It looked like another variation on the same mysterious theme. Then there is a remarkable discovery from Geneva in 1982, a solid silver Roman dodecahedron. Unlike the hollow bronze examples, this one was not designed for looking through or placing something inside. Each of its faces was inscribed with the name of a zodiac sign. This links the dodecahedral shape directly to astrology and the heavens in a symbolic way. It shows that, at least in some contexts, the 12-faced form was associated with cosmic order and celestial meaning. These finds begin to paint a bigger picture. The dodecahedron was not a one-off curiosity. It belonged to a broader tradition of complex geometric objects that may have blended science, symbolism, and ritual. Even more fascinating is how far this tradition may have spread. Smaller dodecahedra with the same basic features, holes in the faces and knobs at the corners, have been found in Southeast Asia, made not of bronze, but of gold. These objects were discovered along the Maritime Silk Road, the vast trade network that connected the Roman world with distant regions across the Indian Ocean. Some of the earliest of these Southeast Asian examples appear to date back to the Roman era. Archaeologist Luis Malloret, who studied finds from Os Eo in Vietnam, believed these objects reflected Mediterranean influence on the local Funan economy. In other words, the idea of the dodecahedron may have traveled thousands of miles through trade, carried not just as goods but as cultural and technological concepts. That possibility changes everything. It suggests that whatever the dodecahedron represented, a scientific instrument, a ritual object, a status symbol, or a mix of all three, it was important enough to move across continents. Researchers have also drawn comparisons between Roman dodecahedra and other mysterious multi-faced objects. Scottish carved stone balls, for example, are prehistoric artifacts covered in knobs and geometric patterns. Gallo-Roman scepter heads found in places like Sturton, by Stowe and Suffolk share similar shapes and decorative features. There is even a dodecahedron known from Ptolemaic Egypt, showing that the shape itself had a long and wide cultural history. These parallels do not prove a direct connection in every case, but they show that the dodecahedron shape carried symbolic and possibly functional meaning in different cultures and periods. It may have represented the cosmos, power, knowledge, or control over unseen forces. When we put all of this together, the Roman dodecahedra, the Arloff icosahedron, the spherical pierced object from France, the zodiac-inscribed silver piece, and the gold examples from Southeast Asia, a pattern emerges. These were not random curiosities. They were part of a wider tradition of geometric objects that seemed to sit at the crossroads of mathematics, astronomy, trade, and belief. Instead of shrinking the mystery, these related objects make it bigger. They show that the Roman dodecahedron was not alone, not simple, and not limited to one narrow purpose. It belonged to a world where geometry, symbolism, and practical knowledge may have been deeply intertwined, a world we are only just beginning to glimpse through the metal shapes left behind. What are your thoughts about the Roman dodecahedron mystery finally being solved? Let us know in the comments section below. The Roman dodecahedron isn't just a mystery solved, it's a warning from history. These small bronze objects suggest the ancient world may have known far more about science, the sky, and survival than we ever imagined. What's truly unsettling isn't just what they were used for, but how much knowledge may have vanished without a trace. If this mystery fascinated you, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Click the next video to uncover more ancient discoveries that are changing what we think we know about the past.